On The View, while talking about Jesse Jackson's reported use of the N-word, Whoopi Goldberg repeated the word several times herself. Take a look.
As I said at the beginning when we first talked about this word, this is a word that has meaning when you give it meaning. I've never met, I have never gone to, I don't know any. There are about. You can try it, just like you can talk about, listen to me, just like you can talk about comical Italian people if you were a comic. You have to understand word that has followed us around, and basically what we did is we took it out of the hands of the people who were using it and put it into our hands, and we use it the way we want to use it, and that's what it is.
This is a conversation that is hard, and we're going to have it here, and we have it here well because we love each other.
Yes.
When we live in a world where pop culture then uses that term, and we're trying to get to a place where we feel like we're in the same place, when we feel like we're in the same world, how are we supposed to then move forward if we keep using terms that bring back that pain?
Elisabeth Hasselbeck was visually upset and even started crying, as you saw a bit there, but Barbara Walters also wasn't so happy.
I just want to tell people, you didn't have a problem with your TV. The word was bleeped. The N-word was bleeped.
You can say it again because they'll just bleep it.
No,
keep bleeping it.
But
okay,
I just
fine.
remember, yes.
If I said it, I'd be off the air. Moving along.
And that raises an interesting question. What if one of the white co-hosts had used Whoopi's kind of language? Joining us tonight, Fox News contributor Bob Beckel, assistant professor of English at Bucknell University and founder of Hip Hop Scholars, Inc., James Peterson, and radio talk show host and Fox News contributor Mike Gallagher. Let me go to James Peterson on this and ask you about your position on this. Is it ever okay to use that word, and is there a public versus private rule that should exist about it?
Well, I think you guys know I've talked about the public versus private rule, but let me try to flesh out a little bit what Whoopi Goldberg is getting at, because I actually think that she has a strong position here, which is, if you look back at the history of oppression of African-American folk here in this country, you can see that the ways in which we have wrestled with that oppression sometimes is all about taking negativity, turning it into a positive. It's all about linguistic and sociolinguistic variation and innovation, and there's empowerment in that. And so there are times in private spaces, and there also are times, unfortunately, in public spaces where black folk reclaim the N-word and shape-shift its meaning a bit. I think it gets tricky, and it's very nuanced, and it's very subtle. It's hard for people to deal with in different situations. I see Ms. Hasselbeck was very upset by this, but the bottom line is there is a long historical precedent of black folk using language to do things just this way.
And Mike Gallagher, before we bring Bob Beckel in here, you know, a lot of groups who's not been particularly empowered in our society have done that. Gays have done it. There's a group called Queer Nation, taking back the Q word from those who would misuse it. You know, and other unempowered groups have often done that. This is historical in
It's
nature.
hard for me as a white man to lecture anybody who's black about the silliness of taking an ugly word and saying, I'm going to take a negative and try to make it a positive. Having said that, I just feel for Elisabeth Hasselbeck, because I think she does feel that frustration of saying, wait a minute, why is Whoopi Goldberg saying this word? Why is Jesse Jackson using this terrible word?
Why would she start crying about it?
I think it hurts. I mean,
does it really hurt? Does it really hurt her? Really?
Yeah, I think it does. She's a good person.
Disingenuous to me. I have no disrespect to her, but that seems a little bit disingenuous to me.
What's disingenuous? That she doesn't like the fact
that compassion should be dedicated towards her trying to connect to the experiences that Whoopi Goldberg is talking about. No, she's not. She's trying to judge them.
And she said to Whoopi Goldberg, we live in the same world, and Whoopi Goldberg said, no, we don't. We don't really live in the same world. What a terrible response.
Hey, Dr. Peterson, this is Michael Steele. I want to ask you a quick question here, because I can tell you as an African American, I'm not empowered by the word. When I hear it, whether it's on a comic stage or in my neighborhood, I'm not empowered by it, number one. Number two, when Whoopi and Sherry, the co-host, say we can use the N-word but you can't, how do we expect whites then to respect us if we don't respect ourselves by using that word, particularly the way Whoopi did yesterday?
Mr. Steele, first of all, we have to respect the history of oppression and experiences out of which that word comes. I mean, at the moment at which black folk try to flip the script, so to speak, now everyone wants to try to censor us. I'll give you an excellent example of this. Everyone wanted to censor Nas's album because Nas is a rapper who had an album coming out and it was the N-word, right? They wanted to censor him, and they did censor him. He had to release the album as untitled. Now, if you go to that record and listen to it, if you look at the imagery on the cover of that album, you will see a hip-hop artist engaged in African-American history. history. He's not using the N-word as a term of endearment. He's not using it in the white supremacist way. He's using it to try to historicize and teach young people how to wrestle with specific history. Now, what I think what gets lost in all the public-private talks and what gets lost in the view is that we don't have a broader sense of the history. Now, Mr. Steele, no disrespect to you. I understand in your neighborhood and your experience, it's not empowering, but for some black folk it is. For Richard Pryor it was. For the last poets it was. And I don't think we can take that away from them.
Well, I'm not going to take that away from them, but the times have changed since Richard Pryor stood on the stage and used the words in Washington, D.C. when he gave his stand-up. But I want to go to Bob. Bob, it's good to see you, buddy. You're looking good as always. But the question for you, free speech versus political correctness. I mean, which is it here? If Barbara Walters had said what Whoopi said repeatedly, the way she said it yesterday, we would be talking about Barbara Walters had been fired and released, yet Whoopi's still on the program. How do we explain this to America, and how do we help all of America, white, black, or otherwise, understand this dichotomy that seems to exist?
Your question, Michael. There are certain words, there are certain descriptions in groups that are in that group that if they want to use it in that group. I mean, I grew up part of my life in a trailer park. We used to call each other white trash. Now, that term, if somebody else tried to use that, not from our neighborhood, would not have been acceptable. Now, the question is in the family, in the African-American family, is the use of that word among African-Americans something that we should not be in the business of trying to figure out or try to censor in any way? The question is if it bleeds out from there. Now, I do have a problem with hip-hop when it comes to gangster, to guns and to women, but not with that word. No, I don't. I agree with Whoopi, and I agree with the professor.
All right, Bob, we're going to get back to that in a moment. Coming up, the TV news stars from ABC, NBC, and CBS are packed and ready to go with Barack Obama on his overseas trip. But where were they when John McCain went to Iraq? We'll examine what looks like a suspicious media bias. And more on the heated debate, race debate on The View that brought Elisabeth Hasselbeck to tears. We'll be back.
My thing is that we don't live in different worlds. We live in the same world.
We do live in different worlds. I'm sorry.
Well, you know
I'm
what?
sorry. It's the way it is, Elizabeth. This is the way it is.
When it's
this is how I grew up.